All right, greetings. Just talking about Archmage Rises again. I made 3 videos. I played a couple extra times, offline, just to sort of get a feel for the game. You should definitely check the demo out on Steam if you can get your hands on it. I don't know if when Next Fest ends, but the demos for Next Fest, you should definitely check it out. What do I like about this game? I love the vibe. I love the vibe of that whole, you are a mage. It's a solo RPG. I like that. I like that immersiveness there. I like the number of things I can do with that, right? So there seems to be a ton of systems that I can operate with. I can enchant things. I can read books. I can buy land. I can craft. I can stealth and overland explore. I can go into dungeons, right? There's a ton of systems. All these systems, I think, are going to be fun to sort of explore. So I think that is a big positive for this game, is the breadth of scope of this game. It's very ambitious. It has that whole life simulator aspect. It has that whole Dwarf Fortress random world and history is created. So I think that's a huge plus, and that really is the promise of this game. So I like that. I like the skill system. I like the D20 skill system. It's very simple. Most people will understand it from their tabletop game if they play D&D. I think I like the vibe of rolling the D20. I like the vibe of the cards on the skill checks. I mean, I like all of that. I think it actually works very well. And so again, that's a big plus. Another plus is goes great with coffee. No, another plus is I didn't have a lot of opportunity to delve into a lot of the spells, but I did enjoy the spells that I saw, and I enjoyed the spell research mechanic, where you could spend experience on the spells. Now, what I didn't quite get was that there was any point to the tiers, since it seemed like I could just unlock a bunch of spells from the very beginning. So I have to explore that more to see what I'm sort of missing there. But I like the fact that I could buy a spell for some experience, and I like the fact that each of those spells then had little individual things that you could improve to give them extra effects. So for instance, my magic missile with the force can now push people back, or it can cause a bleed, that kind of stuff. I like it. I like that a lot. I think the more you can expand on that system, that's a huge bonus. And it gives you some options, right? So your magic missile does damage, but then your magic missile does damage and knocks someone back. That's going to really play into the combat system. I think that's a huge bonus. So I did very much enjoy that aspect, and I think, again, that's another strength of the game. I don't know how many spells there ultimately are or what the plan is, but I did see random ones pop up each time in my playthroughs, even in the same type of magic, and so that's a good sign. What else did I enjoy? I thought the overland was decent in that you could walk hex to hex, and you could even click into the hex to then look at what was in that hex, right? And you could explore the hex. Now, here's the thing. I didn't find much point to exploring, except one time I did find a lair, but I did also not take any of those quests where you were trying to harvest stuff for people. So something I have to think about, and maybe I'll try that. Maybe I'll try that in next playthrough. Is just I'll pick some harvesting quests and see if I can't use the explore to get at those resources to mine for folks. Another thing, I liked going into town. I liked the little town menu. I thought it was cool that there was a bunch of services in each town, that those services differed from town to town. And, I can go into the weaponsmith and go look for stuff. So every town I go into, I'm like, well, I'm going to go check the weaponsmith. Maybe they have something cool. So I did like that also. I thought that the towns were okay for what they were in the game. I like the menu, frankly. I like not having to walk around a big town when there's not much to do other than go to the shops. And so I like the game gets to the point on those towns. Um, so all in all, I had a good time. Oh, the combat system. Let me make sure. I thought the combat system, for what it is, it's not super complicated, but the position of the enemies matters. The position of terrain matters, although the terrain usually is, hey, something is blocking you from shooting this guy behind it. But the fact of the matter is that it's a simple game. You are typically the only piece on the board on your side, although you can have companions. I had companion once in one fight. So it's not going to be super complicated, and the bonus is it's quick, and you're going to have a lot of fights, and you need them to be quick, and there's just the tiniest bit more thought to it than, say, just in a menu with attack, flee, spell, right? It's a little bit better than a menu-based combat, and it's still quick. It doesn't give me a Persona vibe in like a Persona game, but it gives me the vibe in terms of you're going to have a lot of fights, and we're going to make them super quick, and there's just a tiny bit of thing you have to figure out to make sure you can win while taking the least damage. So combat is very much a puzzle of, can I win this fight, expend the least stamina, and take no damage? And that's the puzzle each time. How much do I have to expend? What spells do I have to use to get that done? I think it works. I think it's a bonus and a plus for this game. So I do think the game has a lot going for it. The things that I didn't love, because I'm not even going to say didn't like, but did not love, or didn't understand. So there's a couple things I did not quite understand. Some of the difficulty levels on the skill checks were a little wonky to me. Like, for instance, all the stealth checks I had, a lot of them were DL4s, and I was just like, or DC4s. I play games with difficulty levels. Some have difficulty checks. So DC is a 4. And I was like, is that really the number? Okay. I mean, I wasn't quite sure. It was skeletons and spiders and, maybe those are dumb creatures. I don't know what it's calculating those off of. So I was just wondering, because a 4 is very hard to fail if you have anything going for you at all. It's like a 5%, it's a 15% chance to fail, of course, so 85% chance, and that's fine. But I just wondered about those difficulty levels, where, and I'm rolling a 38. Well, hold on. Right? So, I don't know. It could be perfectly fine. And I could just be misunderstanding the intent there. So that's the first thing. I just was questioning some of the balance and the difficulty checks. The other thing was the combat initiative. I understand, you cast, you have essentially 6 action points every time it's your turn, and you can cast probably 2 spells, you can attack 3 times. I think that's pretty cool. But sometimes I was like, well, the enemies didn't go. Or why do I get 2 turns in a row this time? Like, what's going on there? I didn't know. It wasn't that I was complaining about it. I just don't understand exactly what it's trying to do with the initiative. And I suppose maybe a little bit of feedback in terms of, hey, you killed 2 of this guy's buddies, and so now he's cowed, so now he's not going to attack, would be a little bit more satisfying to me than just, wow, what happened? Is there a bug? Did he not attack? Did he miss me? I don't know. So there's a little bit of that, where there's a little bit of feedback where I was uncertain as to what the game intended during the combat and primarily the initiative. But having said that, I enjoyed the combat system, as I said. I think the dungeon exploration was, it's fine. It is fine. It falls under that category of a game that does this many things, you can't focus on everything. And so the dungeon exploration seemed a little bit weak to me. You move from room to room, right? And it's a bunch of square gridded rooms. So you move from room to room, and then maybe something jumps you and maybe something doesn't. Frankly, a lot of the hovering over to find pixels, I didn't love. The nice thing is it means you can miss something, but the problem then, it becomes graphically sort of inconsistent in the sense that, well, jars last time, jars were interesting. Now jars aren't interesting. So you really do just have to hover your mouse over everything and look for a yellow outline. I'm not a giant fan of that. It's okay. I, but I didn't love it. Ultimately, at some point, I'm like, okay, let me see if I can find the one thing. Oh, I found beer, um, or whatever, right? So it was okay. Again, I think a game that does so much, it's very hard to then get everything perfect. I think dungeon exploration was just okay. That does bring me to the one thing where I do worry about this game. This game's either a 20-hour game or a 200 plus hour game. And the main key is going to be how repetitive does this get? So, and again, you can't gauge this right now. It's not released. It is all this demo, and I don't know what corners they cut and what they did to get something ready for the demo. So, I am in no way, shape, or form condemning this game on what I saw, but sort of the impression that I am getting is that it is possible that for all the randomness, for all the 800 plus years of history that it generates, and all the layers and all the unique people it generates, that it's going to have that same feeling that, say, a Daggerfall did, where you go, I'm glad you randomly generated this, but it's all very samey. So, right, the No Man's Sky planets on release, it's all like, I'm glad you generated 1 million of these, but they're all about the same. And I think that's the danger with random generation is, unless you can put points of interest in your random generation. So for instance, every dungeon, so back to dungeon exploration. It doesn't matter whether the dungeon was skeletons, the spider lair, the goblins, they all were the same. A bunch of rooms, they all had kitchens, they all had, libraries, they all had bedrooms, right? None of them were different or interesting. And they all had the same possible containers and so on. I think that's the danger with the random generation that this game has in it, is everything going to end up repetitive? Because if it's repetitive, at some point you feel you've seen it all. And that point probably is a good 1 or 2 playthroughs, you're probably done. Having said that, if there's just enough, right? It doesn't have to be this great AI algorithmic where everything's amazingly different, right? It doesn't have to be the high tech, whatever. It just a little bit. If I can go into, if this thing can create some situations which are interesting, some just tiny bits of, oh, the spider layer seems different than the bandit layer. Or, man, I went into this dungeon and something was chasing me. All right, so I think what would help would be variety in those dungeons. If every dungeon type were a little different, if the clickables, there were more of them that did more different things, that would give me a lot of excitement in reacting and interacting with these things. Whereas ultimately, I didn't feel that in the demo effectively. So more text events, more differences in the dungeons. The more variety you can get, and the more unique little situations you can create, the better. I have 128,000 guys to talk to in this world, but is talking to any one of them going to get me any unique situation? Is there one time I'm going to talk to someone and they go, hey, you look like my long lost brother or something, like something, anything. I just need some variety and some uniqueness in each of those encounters. And so I think that's really where the game, the demo felt a little bit anemic to that effect. I played 3 times. I did about the same thing every time. Again, that could be demo, and that could be the corners they cut to put a demo out, or that could just be, hey, we have this giant open world like Daggerfall was. There's nothing to do in it. Don't bother. There's 100 dungeons, and they're all totally different because we randomly generated them, and it's all the same set of random corridors, and there's nothing really interesting in them, and they're very samey. If you've seen one, you've seen them all. If the game can avoid that, it is going to be an A game, A plus game. It's going to be a really great game, a couple 100+ hour game. If it doesn't avoid that, it's probably good for a playthrough or two. So we'll see. I don't know. Actually, I'm very hopeful. I like what this game brings. I think it's a solid B right now. And there's bugs. Every run that I had so far completed with a bug. Oh well. I'm willing to let that go because again, demo. I'm definitely going to buy this early access. I'm gonna, as soon as it's out, I'm going to buy it to see where they're at, because it's a good idea and it's the execution is pretty good. So I'm buying it. I give it a B. I think it could definitely be an A or an A plus. All they got to do is put more variety, everything more. A game like this thrives on more. Everything has to have enough crap that the combination of all the variety in this mechanic and the combination of all the variety in this mechanic lead to something wacky happening every so often. You do that, and this game is a winner. I liked it a lot. I'm going to play it again after I get off this video, actually, and do a couple run-throughs because it's fun enough to sort of, keep my attention, and I'm excited for it, and I hope you are too, and I will talk to you all later. Thank you.